John Solomon, first of all, it's a great story that you and Allison Spann did. Just want to...
Well, thank you.
And why isn't it getting more play? You know, I mean, I know it's getting some play, but this is huge, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's an important story. You know, we talk a lot about Russia and all the things that 2016 had raised about Russia, but here is now a documented case, an irrefutable case, that the Russian nuclear industry controlled by Vladimir Putin engaged in bribery, engaged in extortion, engaged in kickbacks, and engaged in money laundering in an effort to expand its business in the United States, its uranium business, under the Obama administration. It won numerous favorable decisions. And at the time that the Obama administration, including Secretary Clinton, made a decision to give them control over 20% of America's uranium supply, they knew that this corruption was already going on, and they didn't use it as a reason to reject the deal. The standard for a review like this is if there's a national security threat, you should not approve the deal. And in fact, the FBI clearly documented a national security threat, and yet they went ahead and approved it.
I think that's your lead. You know, I mean, we knew some of this stuff from Clinton Cash, and then the story the New York Times did, but we never knew that the FBI was involved in investigating this. I mean, that to me, that puts a whole new light on the scandal, isn't it? Isn't that the news?
And here's an even more important thing, I think. The FBI had an undercover witness inside the Russian nuclear machine, cooperating with them, providing eyewitness accounts, documents, records of what the Russians were doing, who they believed they were influencing, why they were taking the actions they were doing, and that confidential witness wants to come forward, but the FBI and Justice Department is blocking him from coming forward.
Oh, no. This is another. It's another Fusion GPS story where the FBI won't turn over the documents or the information that might embarrass Democrats, even though the FBI is now ostensibly controlled by a Republican administration. What the hell is going on here, John Solomon?
Well, here's the big thing. Tomorrow morning at 9:30, the Attorney General of the United States, Jeff Sessions, is going to be before the Senate Judiciary Committee, and I would expect to see some fireworks there. I believe you'll see Senate Judiciary Chairman Chuck Grassley demanding answers and pressing the Attorney General to make the witness available and to explain how it could be that the FBI knew the Russians were involved in corruption and yet allowed the U.S. government to approve these Russian nuclear business expansions. And I think tomorrow will be a very important day.
I mean, and this is not just some minor corruption story like the Menendez trial. This involves national security.
That's right. And here's one of the most troubling parts of the case, why there was a national security concern. Almost immediately when the FBI informer started, the company that moves the majority of the uranium that the Russians take from nuclear warheads, turned it into commercial reactor fuel, and then send to the United States. There's a single company that moves all that uranium. They had been compromised and were a part of a $2 million bribery and kickback scheme. If the people that have the keys to nuclear fuel, to something that terrorists and other black market theater actors would want to have access to, has been compromised by kickbacks and bribery, that's a real national security concern. The FBI knew that in 2009. And yet the Obama administration continued to proceed with expanding all of this nuclear business with Russia. That ought to give people a reason to stay up at night worrying.
What was the Russians' long game? Just to get the uranium to sell to the bad actors on the world stage?
I don't think so. I think it's very similar to what they do in Eastern Europe. So if you are a primary supplier of natural gas, like Russia is in the Eastern European market, if you are a primary supplier of the uranium that powers nuclear power plants, you have leverage over the people who then buy that nuclear material, that natural gas from you. And so the undercover witnessed conversations where the Russians were talking about this being a long game of gaining leverage on the United States by making the United States dependent on its nuclear fuel. And it was a long game, and that's why the stakes were high, and why bribes were made and kickbacks were made, and why the FBI was so concerned, and why this confidential witness brought so much to light that we were kept in the dark about in the rest of the public.
What did Obama know, and when did he know it? Do you ask the Watergate question?
Great question. We don't know that yet. We have some indications that some of the things the undercover informant provided made it to the presidential daily briefing and made it to other senior officials' briefings, but we don't know when and what yet. And we're going to continue to report that out until we get that answer.
Now, I would think that in cases like this, where the FBI or any law enforcement agency develops a CW, a confidential witness, they like to, if possible, wire them up and send them in to get firsthand evidence that they can put use in court. Did the I know it's laughable. When we're talking about the Obama administration. Did it ever occur to anyone? Is there anything in the documents about maybe trying to wire this guy up and send him after the Clintons? They did.
The FBI made surreptitious recordings, sometimes by body and other devices. There also are other monitoring techniques. If you know a meeting's going on, you don't have to have your CI wear an informant. You can use microwave dish and other technologies to spy on what's going on in the meeting. And there is evidence in the court files that a lot of that went on. There was a monitoring of phone records. There was a request to exploit a BlackBerry that one of the Russian actors had. So it looks like the FBI really did an aggressive job at uncovering and using all of its tools and powers to find out what was going on here. The real question is, did we bring enough people to justice? Were there more Russians involved besides the 4 Americans and Russians that were indicted? And one of the things that I wrote in my story today was that this undercover witnessed conversations about Russian efforts to influence Bill and Hillary Clinton. And we don't know any more than that right now because that confidential informant hasn't been able to tell Congress yet what he knows. And tomorrow morning, we'll have a new story that will indicate a little bit about what has happened to that confidential witness. What, over the last couple of years, as that confidential witness has tried to bring to light more of the evidence that he possesses about Russia and the Obama administration and the U.S. government, what has happened to prevent him from going public. And I think that will bring a new layer of understanding to the story.
Did they try to wire the guy to go after the Clintons?
He never had any contact with the Clintons that we know. It's highly probable that he made records, recorded and written records of conversations the Russians had about what they specifically were doing to try to curry favor with the Clintons. And keep in mind, on the face of it, currying favor with a political official goes on every day in Washington and isn't necessarily illegal. It's only when someone curries favor in return for currying favor, they take an official act in return for a gift or money where right. A crime is committed. But there is substantial evidence, as we reported today, that the FBI is in possession of information about what the Russians say they were doing and what gifts and money and other things that they were providing in an effort to gain influence inside the United States, including with the Clintons.
How much did the Russians give the Clintons, the Clinton Foundation?
So what we know is that a Russian banker in June of 2010, which was 6 months before the CFIUS decision approved the uranium deal, made a $500,000 check payment to President Clinton in return for a 1-hour speech. That's a hefty payday.
Yes,
that was one of his biggest speech fees in history. And that over the course of many years, going back from 2008 all the way up to 2014, there were, I think, $18 million of different donations to the Clinton Foundation and to the Clinton Global Initiative from various parties that might have had an interest in the Russian uranium arrangement. That includes a guy named Frank Giristra, who is a very close friend of the Clintons and who had the Canadian, he was the Canadian owner of the company.
He's the one in Clinton
in
Cash.
Our story today, right, that was a big part of Peter Schweizer's great work and the New York Times' great work 2 years ago. So that's been out there. What we are now reporting right now, what we're working on right now, what we're trying to bring to light over the next few days is another form of money that came directly from the nuclear industry, the Russian nuclear industry, routed through an entity that was, at least by the FBI undercover's account, designed to help the Clintons in some way. And that will be a new thread of money that wasn't, previously reported during the Clinton Cash book and all the great work that was done then. And we're still working on that, but we think there'll be some new information that comes.
So there's more money that this is not the speech payoffs to Bill Clinton or the millions of dollars to the Clinton Foundation or the Global Initiative. This is yet a third source of money you're talking about.
That's right, another conduit of money. Now, there's a lot of reporting that needs to be done. Just because the Russians paid someone to do something doesn't mean they did it. Just because somebody took money from from the Russians and then also gave money to the Clintons doesn't mean that it necessarily proves that the two were connected, right? They could have been two separate events by two different people in the firm who didn't know what was going on. So we're still working on that, but there is no doubt that the confidential witness and the FBI learned about a route of money from Russia to the United States to people who were around the Clintons or influential with the Clintons, and that caused some concern at the time this investigation was going on. It'll be a new route of money for sure.
We're talking to John Solomon from thehill.com, and you got to check out the story that they wrote today, and it's going to be it could be an explosion on Capitol Hill tomorrow. It's the headline is FBI uncovered Russian bribery plot before Obama administration approved a controversial nuclear deal with Moscow. Sidney Blumenthal, is he going to figure in some of these stories in the next few days?
I haven't seen his name anywhere or heard his name anywhere in relationship to this. The last time I saw a lot of information about Sidney Blumenthal, it dealt with Libya. This sort of deal would have to go through official channels at the State Department, the Energy Department. And so if you're the Russians, you're going to have to hire someone who has access to the bureaucracies and those agencies. And I think the next chapter in this will be a more traditional way that influence is achieved in Washington, which is through lobbying and political donations and other things. It'll be something you probably see every day on House of Cards or read about in the political papers every so often.
When did you call the Clintons for a comment on this story?
Last week, the first time, and then there's new questions that we transmitted to them today about the stories that are coming, that we're working on over the next few days.
We were wondering about the premature end to her book tour in the United Kingdom, and perhaps it was related to this bombshell story.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I didn't hear anything to that effect. But at the end of the day, I think Mrs. Clinton has said what she's going to probably stick to saying, which is that my husband took money, the foundation took money, but there's never been a connection between the two, and you can't prove it. Now, the one person who might be able to prove it is this confidential witness, and I think you will see a lot of
questions,
pressure put to get this man to come out and be able to say publicly what he knows.
And one last question. What was Rosenstein's role in this whole investigation? Rod Rosenstein, the deputy AG?
Today he's the deputy attorney general who oversees the Russia investigation about Trump. But he was the U.S. attorney who supervised this case from its inception in 2009 to its completion in 2015. So he knows everything about what the bribery scheme was uncovered during the Obama years.
And nothing happened.
Well, a few people were indicted, right? We have 4, but the question is, should more? What more evidence did they have that they did not pursue?
Yeah, it seems like it's like if this were the mafia, they picked up 4 bookies, and the consigliere and the Godfather are enjoying the winter in Florida. That's what it seems like.
Listen, they picked up the Russians' top nuclear official in the United States, so that's a big deal. But what's funny about the case is when you read the court case, it says that this money was going back to benefit people back in Russia. We didn't see any of those people get indicted. Were any of those people that were meeting with the Obama administration? Should they have been indicted? Should all of this negate it, the Uranium One deal? These are great questions that we now have an opportunity to ask, and I would expect Congress to start that process tomorrow.
John Solomon, you did a great job. You and your co-reporter did a great job on this story, and look forward to talking to you again on this.
Much appreciated. Thank you for the attention you've given me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. That's John Solomon from thehill.com. Oh, man, I hope Chuck Grassley. I have confidence in Chuck Grassley. He's pretty good at this kind of stuff. Even Lindsey Graham will do well with this. I'm Howie Carr.